Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of A Gardener's Journey Homestead. I am Barbara and I cannot wait to talk to you guys today. So today I'm talking about when to start your seeds. Y'all know I get excited. So I'm in my sunroom. I got my laptop. All my seeds are out here, as you can probably see right there. They're all organized, and so it's time to get to it, y'all. It is time to get to it. So if you're brand new to me, I am in the state of Tennessee in zone 7B, and this is gonna be my 4th year gardening, which is wild. I feel like I just started. And so I'm really excited to share with you in this video about when to start your seeds, right? Because for many of us, the time is almost here. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how do you even know when to start your seeds? Do you start them all at the same time? Is there something that's starting too early, too late? Like, I'm going to cover all the things. So it may be a little lengthy. We'll see how efficiently I can get through it. But grab you some coffee, some tea, some juice, whatever, and feel free to take some notes, and let's just talk about when to start seeds. So first thing is, I wanted to give an update. As you can see, there's plenty of snow behind me, like plenty. It is covered. So I'm in my sunroom all nice and toasty because for the most part, we are snowed in. But I did go check on my crops in the tunnel yesterday. They are still looking great and fantastic. So that is a blessing. It still has not gotten above freezing here. Tomorrow will be the first day it's supposed to get above freezing. It's supposed to be 38. And that's gonna feel probably warm because it's been in the teens. Last night I got down to 0, which is really unheard of for Tennessee. But I'm in the sunroom. Last night I came out here and organized all my seeds, like got them in containers. I bought 2 more photo cases, so I got them all organized for this upcoming season. And so I did something a little bit different. I've organized mine into my summer seeds, my fall and winter seeds, flowers, and then herbs. It's like the 4 main categories. But let's talk about when to start seeds. So the first thing that you need to know when starting seeds is, when is your last frost date? When is your last frost date? That is the #1 piece of information that you need to know if you plan on starting seeds for this summer, spring-summer garden 2024. And let me just back up. If you are still on the fence about starting your own seeds, consider this. I'm pushing you over the fence, okay? Consider that a nice, gentle push over the hump. I want you to start seeds. What is the worst that can happen? You start some seeds and it doesn't go well. You can always still go buy that transplant at the store. So this season, there's no reason not to at least attempt to start seeds. Maybe you've tried before and maybe you've been unsuccessful. I'm gonna take you on a journey, on my personal journey, as we go through this season starting seeds. I'm gonna do an in-depth video talking about how to just start the seed. What do you do, what not to do, and some common issues. Like, I've been baby stepping us all along the way. So if you haven't seen some of my previous videos over the last 30 days, I did one video talking about seed starting supplies. I did another video just about ordering seeds and how to get organized before you even order your seeds. So now we're at the point of, okay, I got my supplies, they're on the way. I got my seeds, or they're on the way, but when do I start my seeds? Like, do I start them as soon as they get out the mailbox? Like, what are we doing? I got you. So the very first thing that you need to know is, what is your last frost date? So how do you find out your last frost date? Good old Google, okay? You can go to Google and say, what is the last frost date in, and put in your city and state, right? You can go to the Farmer's Almanac specific website. You can ask Siri. She'll tell you. So there's no guessing about when your last frost date is. So remember, that is an estimation, right? So they've taken all of the data over the last, 10, 15 years about when the frost normally ends, and they've gathered that data and they give you an estimated last frost date, right? The reason why that's important is that when you get to your seed packets, On the back of them, it'll usually tell you when to start seeds or when you want to direct sow them if you plan to direct sow, right? Because there's some seeds you want to direct sow, there's some that you want to start early. And on the back of the packet, it'll tell you. It may say something like, start seeds 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. Direct sow 4 weeks before your last frost date. So that's why you gotta know that date. Like as a gardener, it should be like etched. And again, it changes every year, maybe between a day or two. So last year, I think my date was April the 18th, and I'm going from memory. This year, it says the date is April the 20th. So again, we're right within a couple of days. Now, does that mean it's not gonna snow, it's not gonna frost after that date? It does not mean that. It's an estimate, but that's a good basis from which to start. So if you don't know your last frost date, I want you to pause the video right here, look it up, so that as we go through the rest of the video, you already know what your last frost date is, okay? Now that you know your last frost date, now we can count backwards, right? We can count backwards and know when to start our seeds. So let me grab a couple of seed packets just for demonstration purposes. Okay, just to prove to you, if you know your last frost date, then go grab a pack of seeds. I know you got plenty. So if you were to grab a pack of seeds, here's one that I'm gonna pull out, which is from In My Garden, which is eggplant. If you look on the back, you can read that, I think in the middle ways down, start indoors. It says start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before last frost, right? So it tells you when to start the seed. So your seed packet is going to tell you exactly. I have all different kinds of varieties. Let me see if this was a Dollar Tree. People tell you when to start them. Yep. So this is Dollar Tree, still eggplant. Right in there, it tells you when to sow the seeds, right? 8 to 10 weeks before last frost. This says 6 to 8 weeks before last frost. So again, there's some discrimination or variance. So 6 to 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. So if you did 8 weeks, you're like right in the middle, right? So there's some variability in terms of when you want to do it. It's not, if you start these seeds 6 weeks before frost date versus 8 weeks of frost date, the only difference is that you're gonna have a bigger plant if you started 8 weeks before, right? But here's the thing to keep in mind, that remember your last frost date is an estimate, right? So technically that means if the estimate is correct and we're not gonna have any more frost or low temperatures after your last frost date, for me, April the 20th, and I go out to plant my plant in the ground, it should be okay, right? Now, in reality, a lot of times that is not the case. Either there is another frost after that date, or there's not another frost, but it's still not warm enough in the overnight temperatures for your plant to survive. Okay, so I want you to, so remember, think of it as a guide, right? And you do what makes you feel comfortable. For me, for the things that's actually gonna go outside of my outside garden, I'm probably gonna give it a 2-week buffer. So for me, I am looking at planting myself in the outside garden, let's just say May 1st, right? Now, I know people in my area, they usually wait till after Mother's Day, which is another 2 weeks, right? So that could be an additional 4 weeks or a month after the last frost date. So I want you to think about it. If you start these eggplants 10 weeks before the last frost date, then you wait another month to put it out. That's 14 weeks or almost 3 months that plant. You have to think about when you start that seed, it's gonna be maybe in a little peat pot or a little 2.5-inch cup, and you have to up pot it, and you also have to store it, right? So you have to think about how long reasonably will it be in that pot, because you got to feed it nutrients and you got to keep up potting it to a certain point, or the roots are going to get stagnant or it's going to get root bound. For me, I don't want my things in pots for 3 months plus. Did I have some last year that was like that? I did, right? But that's not the ideal. So for me, this says 8 to 10 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks. I'm probably going to go somewhere in the middle and do 8. I'm probably not going to start this 10 weeks before my last frost date, right? Now, if I'm going to plant in my high tunnel, which is protected and covered, and let's say that the low temperature is let's just say 50 degrees outside. And for peppers and tomatoes and eggplant, you really want your your overnight temperature to be 55 and above for your peppers to survive. So let's just say it's 50 degrees, trending forecast at night. If I know this is going in my tunnel, then that's perfectly fine, because I know in my tunnel, it's not gonna get below 50, and it's gonna be warmer than that. Versus outside, I'm not gonna wanna plant this out when it's 50 degrees, trending that way at night, okay? So my point is this: know your last frost date, then look at your packets, and then determine, it'll give you a range, 8 to 10 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. You determine when you wanna start yours and go from there, right? You'll also notice when I show you how I do mine, that I may start some this week and next week, right? So I'm doing a succession, so to speak, right? Or I'm planting extra in case I lose some don't germinate. I may want to give some if I have too many. So there's a lot that you can play around with. But if you're brand new, then I would say stick with the average, okay? If for some reason your plant packet or your seeds do not have the last frost date on the back, so maybe you bought them from like a bulk co-op, maybe it got weathered in the storm and you can't read it, then just look it up on Google. Google is a gardener's friend, right? So just look up on Google when to start eggplant, and it's gonna give you a range, right? So, matter of fact, let's just test it. So let us go to the computer, and we're gonna go to Google, and I'm typing in when to start eggplant seeds indoors. And Google says 8 to 10 weeks, 6 at the latest, before the last frost date. So even if my packet don't tell me, I can go to Google and it'll find out, okay? So when do you start seeds? You're gonna look to see, because for every seed is different, right? So something like basil, this is from Johnny's. Johnny's gives you a lot of information on the packet, but I'll just read to you what it says. It says you're gonna start these, sow indoors 6 weeks prior to last frost date. So sow indoors 6 weeks prior to setting out. So whenever you plan to set it out, sow it 6 weeks before. So whereas I may start my eggplant 8 weeks before, I'm gonna start my basil 6 weeks before, right? Now you may say, man, so every seed has a different starting date. Yeah, it could. You're not gonna start all your seeds at one time. You're not gonna have this massive seed starting day and I'm doing all of my seeds today, unless they're of the same type of variety and have the same window in terms of when to start seeds. But usually if you're doing a variety of different types of vegetables and herbs, that's not gonna be the case, okay? So I'm gonna show you 2 ways that I stay organized and keep up on when to start my seeds, okay? The first way is, for me, I put it in a spreadsheet, right? So that's what I do. So let me pull up my little spreadsheet and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is my spreadsheet. You can see it's just labeled 2024 seed starting dates, and LF is last frost date. So my last frost date is April the 20th. Now, I have this automatically calculated for me, right? So you can see here at the top are the spring crops. So this is 15 weeks out if I was doing like some spring crops. Now, these things right here, collards, broccoli, lettuce, kale, and cabbage, it says that if I'm doing 15 weeks out, I should have started them on January the 7th. Well, you know that we did start those on January the 7th. So even though I'm not calling it my spring crop, it really is, but I already had the stuff in the ground in the fall too. We're just doing a replanting of it, okay? So that lets me know that I can have something before the summer hits. But then if you move down to this one right here at 12 weeks, which is gonna be January the 28th. See if I can get this a little bit more clear. You can see that there's a column that says weeks out, so 12 weeks out, and then it gives me the actual seeding date. Then I can add what medium I'm gonna do it in, how many I'm gonna start, and whether I'm gonna succession sow. So I haven't finished filling out my spreadsheet, but that's what it has on there. So for example, on 12 weeks out, on January 28th, I'm going to start my spinach, but I've already done my spinach because I have a tunnel, right? But technically I can do my leeks, my spinach, my eucalyptus, my parsley, my lavender, my rosemary, and my thyme. Hopefully that makes sense. You can see that spreadsheet and how basic it is, but it helps me a ton because I have it all electronically, right? And I don't have to try and remember and keep up with, oh man, what is basil 12 weeks before? Is it 5 weeks before? Like, it's already written down. And this is the spreadsheet that I used last year. And so because I built it last year and it was already in there, all I had to do was change the estimated last frost date, and it automatically, can populate with the right dates. Now for me, let's just say the 12 weeks before ended up being like a Wednesday or something like that. I know for me that during the week, because I'm working and my schedule varies and I travel a lot sometimes with work, that during the week is not the best time for me to quote unquote start seeds. So I change all of my seeding dates to Sunday because I know on the weekends I'm going to be home, right? So even if I'm traveling for work during the week, I'm always home on the weekend. So for me, Sunday is usually an easier day, a catch-all that I can have an hour or two and I can go out to my tunnel and start seeds. So for me, even though the 12 weeks before may have been like a Wednesday or a Thursday, I moved all my dates to Sunday, right? That's what I did for me. And then you can do whatever is best for you. So now I have a written electronic repository of when to start all of my seeds. So that is one way to do it. If you're more of a pen and paper, then you can write it out on paper. If you're more electronic, then you can do it electronically, right? But the point is knowing when to start your seeds, and they're not gonna all start at the same time. Now, before I show you the second method, let me address a question or concern that I've heard before. And the question is, can I start my seeds too early? And the answer is, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And so, again, remember, my last frost date and your last frost date are two different things, right? So don't get so caught up in watching all of the YouTubers and like, oh man, they started their peppers, I need to start mine, especially if you're not in the same zone and don't have the same growing season, right? We may not be starting our things at the same time. There are some people whose last frost date is before mine. They're already starting their things this week, and I may not be starting mine for another 2 to 3 weeks, right? So can you start early? Yes, if you don't have your last frost date right. Also, for example, on my tomatoes and peppers, for the most part, I will be starting my peppers 8 weeks before my last frost date, and my tomatoes about 7 weeks before my last frost date is what I have planned for right now, right? So let's say I decide I want to start my peppers today. That would be about 13 weeks ahead of last frost date. Is that too early? Yes, it is, if I'm trying to plant them outside, right? I may be able to technically get them, in the tunnel. And I may push the limit and try, because I didn't try that last year. But why would that be too early? Well, I want you to think about something. If peppers are supposed to be started, 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost date, and I decide to start them 13 to 14 weeks before the last frost date, before they can go outside, they are going to get too big and possibly root bound before they can go outside. There's only so much you can up pot, right? Once you get to like a 5-inch pot, you don't want it to stay in there for another 2 months, right? You got to feed it nutrients, and it needs space to expand and grow. And so what happens is the plant's gonna get leggy. It may be nutrient deficient. Leaves start turning colors because you started it way too early. And you have a plant that was looking great, healthy, viable, beautiful, and you're like, man, it's ready to go outside right now. But when you look at the calendar, it's March 15th, and your last frost date is April the 20th. You're like, I gotta let this thing hold on another month. And what happens is you wait another month, and then a snowstorm comes in. You're like, I gotta wait another 2 weeks. Your plant is no longer good. It's no longer viable, right? Because you started them too early. So there is a method to the madness and a science behind. There's a reason why you start peppers 8 weeks before and you start squash 2 weeks before, right? There is a reason, because of the growth rate of the plant, the nutrients and what it needs, and how big the plant grows. So yes, you can start too early. Now, when they give you a range, you have to decide personally where you want to be in that range. 8 to 10 weeks, do you want to start at week 10, week 9, week 8? That's up to you. Now, could you start it at week 7? You could. You're just not going to have as big of a plant as you would beforehand. So for like tomatoes, if I start mine 7 weeks early, that gives me a good runway. Now, can I start tomatoes 2 weeks before my last frost date? Yeah, I can. They're just not going to be as big and not going to be able to go out as fast, right? But because I have a long growing season, right? Because my first frost date is not scheduled to be until mid-October, and my growing season is 180 days, then I can start tomatoes 2 weeks before the last frost date, 1 week before the day of the frost date, and I can still have tomatoes before my garden season ends, right? But that's why it's important to know your last frost date and your first frost date, okay? So that is one way that I organize my seeds, and I know when to start them. Here is the second way that's really an outgrowth of this way, right? But you can just do this way if you wanted to. Again, you can look up all of the last frost dates, write it down on the back of a napkin, electronic and all that, but then take it a step further. So what I do is this. I did this for the first time last year, and it was a game changer for me. Now that I know, let me pull this up again, what I'm starting when, then what I do next is I get me a Post-it note. Let me show you. And I write 1/28, because that's the first day I'm starting seeds, right? And so I start to gather all of the seeds that I'm gonna start on January the 28th. So for me, I'm not doing leeks, I don't think. You know what? I've never done leeks from seed. Maybe I'll try. But I'm gonna do my eucalyptus, I'm gonna do my parsley, I'm gonna do lavender, rosemary, and thyme. Now my eucalyptus and my lavender are currently in my freezer because they do well with cold stratification, so I can't pull them out yet. But I can go back to my spreadsheet and know. But my parsley and my rosemary and thyme and leeks, I can go ahead and gather those things together, and then I put this Post-it note on it, and then I rubber band it and put it in a stack. So let me give you a demonstration of what that looks like. Okay, so you saw me kind of going around gathering the stuff. So this is what it looks like. So I have my little Post-it note that says January the 28th. I have my thyme. I have my parsley. I have my spinach in case I want to do some more, since that was on my sheet. And then I have my leeks, right? I realized in going through this is that I don't have rosemary, right? I've never started rosemary from seed. I've never started leek from seed, so I may try this time and just see what happens. It's not a big deal if it doesn't, because I do have rosemary growing in my garden right now, and I can just buy it as a transplant if it doesn't. I've heard that rosemary is really hard to grow from seed. But basically, I put a rubber band around it, and this is my packet. So I will do this for everything on my spreadsheet, right? And what happens is I'll have these little packets all the way around, you know. So when it's time for me to start seeds on that Sunday, because every Sunday I'm starting seeds. Once I start in January 28th, every single Sunday or every week, I am starting new seeds. But instead of me trying to figure out, okay, this week, what am I starting? This week, what am I starting? I'm gonna do this for every single date on my spreadsheet. I'll have these packets. So when January the 28th hits, all I gotta do is come out here, grab this packet, and head out to the tunnel to start my seeds. This is organization on another level, okay? It's going to help you. Y'all know if you follow me, I try to be as organized as possible because that's how I run my life. That's how I'm most efficient, and that's how I can be a pleasant person. It's because things are organized in my life. If that's not your jam, no worries. But if it is your jam, get with your girl. Do what I do, okay? So, y'all, that's it. So we talked about when to start seeds and how to figure that out. We talked about, can you start them too soon? Yes, you can. We talked about what happens if you start them too soon. And then I gave you 2 ways to organize your seed starting. At the end of the day, it's time to get it. Go ahead and get your plan. If there's something that I did not answer about when to start seeds, please put it down below. If there is another way that you personally do it, share with the group, share with the class, put it down below. We can all learn and grow from each other. There is no one right way to do it. Let's just get it done, right? So for me, I'll be starting seeds in about a week and a half, starting with this right here. So I got to do all the rest of these. Once you and because I have my seeds organized, now I'll print out my spreadsheet so that way I don't have to keep going back to my computer. I'll print out the spreadsheet and I'll just walk around and put all my stuff in bundles with a Post-it note and a rubber band. And then that way I'm pretty much on autopilot. The other thing I'll do is I'll fill out my spreadsheet with how I'm going to start the seed. So that I have to think about that a little bit more. Some things I'll do in soil blocks, some things I'll do in a 2.5-inch pot, some I'll do in a 6 sail. And that depends on how many I'm doing, how long before it goes out into the ground. There's a lot of factors that are involved in that. So I still got work to do on my end, but again, I'm taking you through the journey one step at a time on what I do to get ready for the summer garden. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that wherever you are, you're safe, you're warm, and that you have food to eat out of your gardens or that you've preserved over that time. Remember, gardening is a journey. Let's grow together. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.